This is weird.
From the land of conjurers, flying through the internet to your device like a UAP, hauntingly unexplained and downright weird, this is the Witching Hours, and we are ready to take off in the flash of an eye. Good evening to one and all, wherever and whenever you are listening to this program. I am Frosty, and joining me a little bit late tonight was the medium Jenny Lee. How are you doing, Jenny?
I was going to say, when it went off and said, this is weird, like, yeah, this is weird that Facebook wasn't working.
Yeah, some technical, it's been a minute since we've had one, so I guess we were due for a little technical snafu.
It was all Facebook's fault. But hello Facebook to Isabel and Christopher on Facebook. Hi, Facebook friends.
See, I'm glad that we fixed it because Facebook would have been out of the loop tonight. So
I know. And we have Sheepy and Witness Dude and Keisha and Norris are all popping in over on Twitch. Hello, everybody.
Yeah. Isabel, welcome in. Sheepy. Nice to see everyone here. Thank you for joining us tonight. We have another great show for you tonight. We're excited about it and ready to get going.
Yes.
I guess, we got a couple things coming up that I should probably mention at the beginning of the show. We are, once again, doing the Team Weird Takeover.
Yes.
Live in June. We are going to be at the Lord Baltimore Hotel. Tickets are still available. You can go to our fourth wall page, thewitchinghourspodcast.com, go to merch. It'll take you right there. And you can get your ticket and you can come and join us at the Lord Baltimore Hotel. We have a bunch of wonderful guests that are going to be, talking and we're going to have a seance with Sam Baltrusis. So we're going to have a great time. So if you want to join us at the Lord Baltimore Hotel in Baltimore, Maryland, make sure you go to thewitchinghourpodcast.com and you can grab your ticket, and we're going to have an absolutely wonderful time. Also, I guess, Jenny, you have an event coming up as well.
Yes.
Do you want to mention that?
Speaking of Sam and Kim Sage, who will be with us at Team Weird Takeover, they're having an event at the Belgrove Plantation here in Virginia in May. I think it's May 22nd through 24th. Keisha's on it. She's sharing all of the links.
Thank you, Keisha.
And I'm going to be teaching an art class on making a personal woo-woo mandala.
Good.
So it's going to be a fun time. If you're in the area, come join us. And welcome to Hosters and CMC.
Lots of stuff going on. I know that Spirit Realm is going to also be doing some more investigations that we might be jumping on. So we will keep you guys up to date as we get more information on that. Other than that, Jenny, are you ready to get into some?
We better
into some news
because we're running late.
The weird news brought to you by Pepsi Wild Cherry Zero Sugar.
No, we wish.
So some interesting news that's come out. Of course, the news cycle just keeps churning. But one thing you might have seen over the weekend was President Obama states aliens are real in a new podcast.
Yes,
interview.
He did. He just came out and said it. Yep, they're real. I haven't seen any of them.
Former President Barack Obama has stirred national intrigue surrounding extraterrestrial life, boldly stating in a recent podcast that aliens are indeed real, even if he hadn't laid eyes on them. So essentially what he says in the interview is someone asks, it's like a quick fire-off session. Like I'm going to pop questions to you and you answer them real quick. Speed round. Yeah. And they say, are aliens real? And he says, yes, but I haven't seen them. And then he goes on to say, like, there's none at Area 51 or whatever. Now, that went crazy. That was all over the news feeds. What he has clarified, someone else asked him about it today, and he said that he has seen no evidence during his presidency that extraterrestrials have made contact with humans, but he believes that aliens exist. He believes that there's life. He just doesn't know if they've come to Earth yet or not. But
he was remembering his top secret clearance as president.
I think the speed round might have tripped him up, but we'll see. either way, it was intriguing, and we'll add to some of the debate here about
Yeah.
what presidents know, because he did bring up the idea of, like he said, unless there is a really big conspiracy where all this stuff is kept and the president doesn't even know about it.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see.
Hoaxers didn't like the way he said it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Series of mysterious animal slayings stir chupacabra concerns in Mexico.
Chupacabra is making a comeback.
Yeah, a Mexican community is on edge following a series of mysterious animal deaths that have sparked speculation that the infamous chupacabra could be on the prowl. According to a local media report, the strange spat of incidents in the city of Tenabo started earlier this month when a resident woke up to discover that 10 of their turkeys have been killed by an unknown predator.
Dang.
So, say precise wounds, same things you normally hear, draining of blood, punctures, nothing else necessarily eaten. A few days later, the mystery beast struck again on a neighboring property where it took down an unfortunate pig in a similarly vampiric fashion.
Wow.
This all happened within the span of a week. So suspicions have spawned night patrols in the community, and concerned property owners hoping to protect their animals and prevent any future attacks are on high alert for
Chupacabra watch.
Yeah, I haven't heard a lot of chupacabra sightings lately, so they come back around again.
Mm-hmm. Bringing it back.
Story number 3, scientists suggest our brains could experience new dimensions of reality before we die. A groundbreaking study has suggested the human brain could experience new dimensions of reality before death while also detailing the last words a person may hear on their deathbed. Dr. Sam Parnia, Director of Critical Care and Resuscitation Research at NYU School of Medicine in New York, previously worked on a study looking into what happens to the brain once a human dies, as well as speaking to survivors who have experienced NDEs or near-death moments. In the 2023 study that discovered a brain can wake up even when healthcare professionals may be performing CPR following the heart stopping. And they're talking about the data collected. Let's try this one. Electroencephalograms. Experts,
I think you did a really good job on that.
Experts uncovered patients can potentially hear what people are saying in the room, describing it as if they were in a dream. Although doctors have long thought the brain suffers permanent damage after about 10 minutes after the heart stops, their work found that the brain can show signs of electrical recovery long into ongoing CPR, Parnia said. There we go.
There's plenty of near-death experiences that prove that to be true. They were dead for quite a while, and then they came back, and everything was fine.
I guess that's my question, though, is, if you're having an NDE, if someone experiences an NDE, does it shouldn't necessarily require the brain to be alive, right? Because you're experiencing something through spirit. So I think that's intriguing if you can.
Depends on who you ask.
I know. That's what I'm saying. So I think that's interesting just to get into.
You're looking at the scientific side, they're probably going to say you're just experiencing it in your brain. Your brain's not dead yet.
We just had a news article not that long ago that was talking about, the same thing about what, like this lights and stuff like that they could see diminish once the body had died. So it'd be curious to, keep going down that rabbit hole, I guess.
Yeah.
And then finally, we have an interesting story tonight, especially for all you out there, all those guilty people in chat for buying too many crystals.
What are you talking about?
There was a weird article we had here, how to spot fake healing crystals and avoid costly mistakes.
Oh, yes.
The healing crystal and gemstone industry is booming, fueled in part by social media, but experts warn buyers to be cautious of fake products flooding the market, which I've been hearing a lot of people talk about lately. Jamie England, who owns a crystal shop in Sedona, said consumers can find fake crystals in stores and at gem shows. And she talks about how everyone has to be able to do their own research now for this. The crystal craze has exploded online with the hashtag crystal is generating 20 billion views on TikTok. England has built up 215,000 Instagram followers and opened a physical storefront in Sedona. So essentially what they're talking about is people are finding stones that have been dyed, stones that are glass, stones that aren't real stones.
I've bought a couple of them myself.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. So, you know, they say essentially that the tips that come out of this news story was to ask the shop where they get their crystals from. Mm-hmm. And they should be able to tell you at least the country of origin and oftentimes the actual mine, the name of the mine that they get them from. So that's a good way to check
the local landfill and pick up the busted clips.
Yeah, put them in a tumbler or something. Yeah. So that was on
for Bailey's beer bottle from last week. I just stuck it in a tumbler.
Yeah, make sure that all your sourced gemstones are coming from Hoagie's mines. They should have the name for it. Physical tests can help identify fake crystals too. Glass fakes sound different. And make sure they don't have unnatural dye patterns. If it looks a little too good, chances are maybe it is not quite real.
Plus, we've had this conversation, and it's not scientifically proven, but we've noticed that many stones don't get dusty.
Oh, yeah.
We've had that conversation.
Yeah, I remember you guys talking about that on your stream.
They don't get dusty at all, or they get dusty way less than the things around them.
They don't get dusty.
Yep.
I wonder if there could be a scientific explanation for that.
I don't know.
All right. Anyway. That was the weird news.
Good job. Good job with the weird news today.
Not brought to you by Diet Pepsi.
No, but maybe somebody soon. We're offering sponsorship.
Yeah, if you want to sponsor the weird news, hit us up. We're ready for it. So yeah, there we go. All right. Patrck Keller is an educator, speaker, and host of the Big Seance podcast, which is a forum for paranerds. I think I would definitely probably fit into that.
I think most of us do, yeah.
To have an open dialogue about all things paranormal. He has been a featured podcaster on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie and is a member of the Podcast Academy. Some of Patrick's notable guests have included Chip Coffey, Lloyd Arbach, Amy Bruni, Adam Berry, Rosemary Ellen Guiley, Troy Taylor, and many, many more. Patrck founded the Missouri Spirit Seekers, a paranormal research team, and has spent a lot of time experimenting with spirit communication tools and techniques such as EVP, electronic voice phenomena. One of Patrick's passions is cemetery photography and spending hours at a time capturing the natural beauty of the cycle of life and death in a place typically stricken with grief. We are really excited to welcome to the show Patrck Keller. How are you doing, Patrck?
Yay, dude. I got so excited when I saw your wild cherry Pepsi Zero because I'm addicted to many of the zero sodas.
Yeah.
But, it is so hard to find the wild cherry Pepsi Zero kind. Usually I have to settle for Pepsi Zero or Coke Zero.
Yeah.
But,
they have it at my grocery store. They just do. And so I get it. That's just my go-to now.
Big fan. We're we can be buds now. For sure.
The paranormal and zero wild cherry. We're ready to go.
But no, I am so excited to be here. And so thank you for asking me. It's been a long while since I've been asked to nerd out on a show. So here I am. It's like happy hour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's literally happy to have you. So let's start at the beginning as we usually do. How did you get involved and interested in paranormal things? Was there something that happened in your childhood that caused such an interest, or when did that start?
I am probably not typical. I am a late bloomer in the paranormal, I think. I of course we've heard
that from a few people, but it is not
really.
It's not the common. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I try to think back and try to think, could I have had a paranormal experience growing up and just didn't realize it? Or was this experience, could that have been like, I try to romanticize experiences I had to make me have a paranormal experience growing up, but I didn't grow up in a haunted house. I didn't have, any of those experiences. And I did love Halloween. I was a Halloween nerd growing up. I still love Halloween. I love the nostalgia of those things. I always loved a good ghost story, things like that. But it wasn't until there were a couple of things that were happening in my life at the time. This was probably around 2007, 2008. A boyfriend I had at the time suggested I read a book that was part of a series, the Tales of the City series from the 70s and 80s. And they're still coming out, actually, from Armistead Maupin, great author.
That's a great name.
Oh, yeah. Armistead Maupin.
Maupin.
Yeah. And he's still around, and every now and then he'll add a book to the series. So there's like 10 or 11 books in the series. But I looked at my ex, and I only read books when I had to. And even then, like growing up, I hated reading. In your college, you read what you have to, but and I did a lot of drama and theater and speech and stuff like that. I can read fine and I can present, but comprehending was always a struggle, and I just didn't enjoy it. So I looked at him and I was like, right, like I'm going to read this book. But I took it and I winked. And I guess I was just bored enough that week that I read it, and for some reason it hit me and I got sucked in. And within like 2 weeks, I think I had read 4 or 5 other books from the series.
Oh, wow.
And from that time on, I dumped the boyfriend and kept the books and, would be called like, hey, you want to go out tonight? No, thanks. Got a book going. I'm good. I'm entertained. So for a year or two, I read a book a week. Wow. And I eventually kind of transitioned to nonfiction topics. I was at Borders, which was one of my favorite bookstores at the time. I bought way too many books. And there was a book in the bargain bin, I remember it, by oh gosh. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm going to forget. Anyway, there was a book by a medium, a famous medium at the time, not John Edward. There's the other one that was really popular at the time.
Sylvia Brown?
No, a gentleman.
A gentleman. I don't know. John Edward, I remember him. I'm not sure.
Anyway, so it was a book about, just the afterlife. And I just thought it looked interesting and I grabbed it, and that totally was a life changer. And so that book, along with my parents calling me on Halloween night, one night, like around 2008, saying, hey, we're watching this show. They're live at some haunted place, and it was Ghost Hunters, one of their all night things.
Halloween
and I was like,
specials. Yeah.
I was like, what are you doing? What? So I, over the phone, my, probably wall phone in my apartment, I talked to my parents while we watched this. And so then I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. So, a lot of paranormal investigators won't admit that paranormal television is what got their start, but I will, as embarrassing as it is, that's how it happened. And then, within a year or two from that, I started finding podcasts. My now husband introduced me to podcasts, and for several years, the only podcasts I listened to were paranormal podcasts and the Paranormal Podcast with Jim Harold. And then I just got obsessed with it, and I could not stop reading books by mediums and books on spirit communication topics and EVP. And then all of a sudden I was experimenting heavily with things and organizing seances. And then I formed my paranormal team, which was really my family. And for a couple of years, we were, doing lots of investigation and learning, and I was really heavily into it all. And then I needed a place to vent and chat about it because my husband is not into this, right? He's very supportive, but he just doesn't want to talk about it, and he'll kind of roll his eyes a little bit. But I needed a place to talk about it, right? Not everybody in your life is going to be a paranerd. And I think a lot of people, chatting and watching tonight can relate to that, right? That's why for some people, it might be why they're here. This is the only place where they can communicate and kind of absorb it. Exactly. And so I started a blog, which was the Big Seance blog at bigseance.com. And I blogged daily for a year or two and did lots of experiments, and then shared my, what I was learning and finding. And then eventually the blog turned into a podcast. And, I was telling Frosty before we went live that, and he agreed with me that, I am not an expert at anything. And I think most of us in this field are not, but I'm a nerd at everything and like to try and put my hands in a lot of things, and I fail at a lot of things. I've tried. I wanted to be a medium so badly when I first got into this. I called it my spiritual shift, when all of this happened. And oh my gosh, I was learning how to channel. That was believe it or not, that was one of the first things I tried to do, was learn how to channel. Hello, could you pick something?
You jumped in the deep end.
Could you get some like dowsing rods or something first? No, let's try to channel.
Yeah, you didn't ease down.
Yeah, like you usually start with tarot, or you
didn't ease down the steps into the baby pool. You jumped into the deep end. Yeah.
And man, I was astral projecting and having all these. Oh man, and then I also have had a lot of experiences that were just boring and nothing happened. Most of it is just like sitting in the dark, like in a paranormal investigation, and hoping something happens and imagining something's happening. But then all of a sudden it's snack time, like where you fall asleep, like it's really quiet. But I've since been kind of burned out. I think for several years I burned myself out on it, and I took it too seriously. And, I think for a lot of people in the paranormal, everything is about proving that something is paranormal. And I'm very I have a lot of obsessive compulsive tendencies, and if I can't, I would get so aggravated if I couldn't decide 100%, is it paranormal or is it not? And then of course, everybody in the paranormal will poo-poo each other's evidence, including me, because we weren't there. Right. I can barely trust myself to make the decision on whether something is paranormal, let alone some other random paranormal weirdo like ourselves. Yeah. And so I finally had to get to the point where I said, you know what, just enjoy it, pull back, baby, and just have fun. And it doesn't matter what everybody else puts out, and let them have their fun, and you have your fun. And maybe it's paranormal and maybe it's not. And that was quite a few years ago. And I don't have that many paranormal investigation experiences anymore. I really stopped. For a long time I did like daily EVP experiments, and then listening to it for hours and hours and debating, and it takes a lot of energy, right? I've spent hours at a Ouija board with my arms getting sore and my neck hurting and going, ugh, forget it, it's bedtime. And so I kind of have had my fun with a lot of that stuff, and I still love talking about it. I love a good conversation about the paranormal and what life is like on the other side. But I'm not a medium, and I'm not an expert at any one tool. And, but gosh, every now and then I will find someone who wants to go out and spend the night at a haunted location and bring all the gadgets and the toys. And, but, I'm happy just watching other people talk about it now too.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I can kind of get with that on a few different levels. One, I do in paranormal investigation, but I don't consider myself to be a paranormal investigator. I just kind of enjoy going and see if I can have experiences. And I think you made a really good point that, sometimes people will become obsessed with like, they have to, they're going to find the evidence that proves that the other side is real. But I don't know if that can ever happen. I just don't know if it's something that's meant for us to be able to realize, like in our material world. I think we can get fleeting moments of that. And I just want to experience those if I have the opportunity. But I'm also, with all the different areas of paranormal, I get really interested in. So it's really hard for me just to pick one. Well, going back to like not the master of anything, like, whether it's the spirits and the ghosts, but also Bigfoot and, whatever, Mothman and all that other stuff that's out there too. So I can definitely agree with you on kind of how that goes there. So you said you started doing podcasts. So you started doing your podcast, and earlier you were saying, what, about 2014 when you started the podcast? So you were in it pretty early on there.
Yeah, I used to joke that I started podcasting PS, which was pre-Serial. A lot of people, elder podcasters, would make fun of people who joined after Serial, after the craze of Serial, because everybody wanted to be a Serial at the time. And fortunately, I started like a month before Serial, so I could claim that coolness. But yeah, 2014 was a big year in podcasting. Podcasters will talk about 2014 as being a big year where a lot of people bought in and started a podcast. And I really, really enjoyed it. And I still, my part-time work now that I'm retired is producing and editing podcasts for others. And that's where I kind of scratch that itch and love the creativity of, I work on some highly produced podcasts and do some live elements of some podcasts like this. And so, I don't know, it probably makes some of my listeners sad, but it's like, I don't, feel like I have to jump on what it's, you guys know, it's hard to produce a regular podcast, especially if you're doing most of those elements on your own and finding people. And I stopped, I always insisted on, if I'm going to have someone on my show, or if I'm going to feature a topic on my show, I want it to be something that just organically has popped into my paranormal world. That was always my tagline, even from when I was a blog, was, my paranormal world. I didn't want to just, you get a lot of pitches on a podcast, and I didn't just want, hey, somebody sent you, I didn't want to be the coast to coast where you have somebody on and you're like, I've never heard of this person. I don't know. Let's learn about it. And so, after so many episodes, I kind of felt like, I've kind of done this. And, every 3 or 4 months when something pops in front of my eyes and I find a new book or find a new person or find a new creator that inspires me to start thinking and talking about it, then I come out and we'll do an interview. And, but yeah, there's many episodes there of some really cool and nerdy people.
Yeah, a lot of cool people.
And sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, you're fine. I was going to say, podcasting came about at a good time for me because I was always interested in AM radio. I was a coast to coast AM nerd, like coming right out of high school, working graveyard shifts. So I was listening to art. And, I just loved all kinds of AM radio, all kinds of stuff I was listening to. Now the rest of the story and, all the things that went on there. But, that kind of died out and it had become really political and things like that. I wasn't as interested in anymore. And so when I came across podcasts, I was like, well, that's what this is. Like all these, because I was already a little bit older and I was like, all these young kids, they're talking about podcasts like this is something new. All this is AM radio, put into you can make it short, you can make it long, you can have long form interviews, you can have short form interviews. But, when I found podcasts, I was like, well, this is great because this is what I wanted to hear more of. Like I wanted more people to do AM radio and talk about things. And so, for me, that was great. And I guess that kind of thing snagged you too. The idea that you could just have podcasts about all these different kinds of topics.
Yeah. And it was actually Jim Harold of the Paranormal podcast that convinced me to give it a try. I was already blogging. And so I had an audience, and so I was brave. And he at the time he had created a podcasting course. And I think I was the one graduate from his podcasting course, but it really did help me and inspired me. And I trusted him because at the time, like I said, that was the only podcast I listened to for several years. And, back then when you were plugging the iPod in and, downloading it and, all of that, I would get so excited and binge all of his episodes. And so, yeah, he was a big inspiration for that. And, but yeah, you meet so many cool friends and people that I have met and groups of people, which lead to other groups of people and like paranormal investigators in Australia that, I've visited and they've come here and just so many cool connections. And I can also say that, my podcast is probably part of the reason, and my listeners are sometimes shocked to hear this, that I think over the years since 2014 and since, I've been involved in paranormal investigation, I've gotten slightly more skeptic. I've always been down the middle, 50-50, which makes me want to, poke my eyes out sometimes. I've always told my listeners, and I'm sure they get tired of it, I fight with myself all the time. The skeptic side is rolling its eyes and the other side is going, oh, come on. I want it to be real. I want it to be a ghost. I want it to be real. Yeah. And then,
I want to believe.
Yes.
Right. We're Patrick. We got a lot in common, man.
Really? Okay. Well, bring the wild cherry Pepsi over to the house.
We're ready to go.
But yeah, I think I have gotten more skeptic a little, and that is probably another reason I've pulled back a little bit. It's like I've had those discussions and now I just kind of sit back and think privately sometimes about
I mean, I get in that. I would say that I'm definitely like someone who wants to believe. I'm still in that phase. I'm probably becoming a little bit less of a skeptic as I go along. I'm getting more woo every day, I think. Me and Ginny used to have more, we're getting there. But like you said, I have had experience like Ginny does mediumship classes, and I've joined in and done some of that and have been able to have some experiences. And earlier you were saying that you had some experiences too, right? Like trying to with
I have had some weirdo experiences, and a lot of those experiences were when I was really, really heavily into it, and taking it way too seriously. There was one of my crazier stories. It's kind of involved, so just tell me to shut up if it gets too long.
Nope, you go.
Okay, all right.
That's what we're here for. We're here for
ready to go.
The weirdo story.
I was doing a lot of at the time it's now the A-Trans-C organization, that organization, which is formerly the American Association for EVP, which was started by Sarah Estep.
Okay.
Who was the first American kind of expert in EVP. And she started the American version of that organization. And so there was a lot she documented about, some of the best practices about EVP. And then the couple that took on the organization after she died, they wrote a book about, best practices and all of that. And so I followed that as a guide. And I did like 3 weeks, 3 weeks of daily EVP experiments, and probably almost got divorced that month because I would insist that my husband was out of the house so that I could prove that I was the only one in the house.
Oh, wow.
And I would do it for 30 minutes at a time or whatever.
You were doing this in your home?
In my home. I've never had a problem with those things. But you'll hear from this experience that maybe I should not have. I don't know. I was doing a lot of that. I was also, for the blog, this was before the podcast, was doing some seance experiences with a then medium friend of mine, and, recording those and then blogging about those and trying to capture evidence, and, nothing really, crazy happening at this seance. But it was a cool experience. And so we had 3 of those over like a month or so. And then also there was a week in the middle of all of these things where a family reached out and wanted some help at their home. And one of those experiences where, at the time, especially now and during what I called the paranormal craze, at the height of the paranormal shows, the paranormal teams, it was so saturated, right? And if someone wanted investigation, they wanted TV crews, and they invited their friends over. And I'm like, I'm not doing this if you're inviting friends over, because that just means that you're not serious about it or whatever. And so, but this family was serious. They didn't want anybody to know. They were scared. They had, teenage daughters. And so and of course, I'm teaching full-time middle school children and stressed from that as well. Mm-hmm. But we did an overnight investigation, myself with my medium friend, and did that. And so I was burned on both ends, right? But loving it. And had an experience where I was sitting there going over all of my evidence, which takes weeks, for something like that for me when it's just you. And I had a cabinet in my office at the time that I would keep all of my paranormal tools and a lot of my EVP stuff. And I'm sitting there trying to, stay awake and, go through stuff. And all of a sudden the door to the cabinet just opens. And I look over at the cabinet, and because I'm so stubborn and insistent and OCD and trying to get things done, I looked over at it and went, and then went back to my business and just kept on going. And then, like an hour or so later, you're like, what the hell are you doing? That was an invitation.
Yeah.
This is what you're about. Are you dumb? So I missed that experience. But it is funny now looking back on it. And then like a couple of nights later, I'm lying in bed and I'm sleeping, and I'm on the right side of the bed. My husband's on the left side of the bed. This is in the middle of the night. My husband is asleep, and I am on my left side. So I'm on my left side facing my husband, if you can picture this. And I had been asleep. And I wake up suddenly. I don't remember what time it was. It could be the witching hour.
I don't know. Be.
I would like to think it was to make this story spicy.
Yeah, it's your story,
Yeah, but I wake up and it is super cold and my heart is racing. And I've had this feeling like maybe 2 times in my life ever. And all of a sudden I could tell. And I joke about being as psychic as a rock, right? I've tried a million things, but I really don't. I'm not that into the feelies, right? Well, I could tell something was there. I also knew that I was awake. I did the whole pinch myself, all of that stuff. But then here we go. The skeptic side of me is going, is there some wives' tale about men not supposed to sleep on their left side? Am I having a heart attack? What is it? I'm feeling no appendages are asleep, but I'm still very cold. And all of a sudden I'm getting very anxious. And so I'm still on my side and I'm picturing, I close my eye and I'm like, white light, white light. Imagine the white light. You know, I'm trying to get into my woo woo. I'm like, go away, white light, white light. Nothing helps. I swear to God. And I know that this makes people think, oh my God, he's another crazy person. But a hand came over the side of the bed, a cold, dark hand grabbed my shoulder. I'm on my left side. It grabbed my right shoulder and pulled me to my back. So from my side to my back, I instinctively grab for the hand and the hand retreats under my hand. So I actually felt the hand and the hand retreats
all the way
and goes over to the side of the bed. And I'm just sitting there in bed going, and I want you to know I've never been afraid of ghosts, and I've been in haunted places by myself alone.
Yeah.
And I like to brag about the fact that most of the time I sleep like a baby, and there's, you know, I just don't get afraid too much. I am afraid of the dark in general, you know, but I was not going to get out of bed. No. There was no way I was going to get out of bed with potentially something under the bed. But what I did is I grabbed my iPhone, which was probably one of the first iPhones at the time, and I went to the recorder app. And my husband's still asleep this whole time, which is cracking me up. And so I hit record and I hold the phone up and I go, hello. Has anybody tried to communicate with me? You know, because I've always said, you know, people talk about shadow people and the evilness of dark, you know, shadows and all. And I'm like, how do you know it's not just your Aunt Betty? And that's the only way that they can muster up communication. And they're trying really hard, you know. I don't know how much I believe in all of that stuff. However, this is the only time I've ever felt like this was weird. So anyway, the next morning I woke up. I don't know how I went back to sleep, but I did.
Yeah, really.
The next morning I woke up and I found that recording on my phone. So I was like, I didn't imagine this. I was awake. I'm sure that there could be an argument that I was in some kind of hypnagogic something or other.
Swamp gas, something.
Yes, yes. Exactly. My husband. There you go. But there was nothing there in the recording. And then it only happened a similar experience a couple nights later where I woke up in the middle of the night again with that same feel. And nothing happened, but I noticed my dog that we had, he's since passed. My dog, who never did this before, it was in the middle of the night, was sitting in the middle of the door frame to the room, to the bedroom, sitting facing out, watching outside the room. And I was like, and so, you know, I always laughed off people saying, you know, you got a hitchhiker or you brought something home or whatever. In this case, you know, I just had my hand in a lot of things. And I think, you know, I grabbed a little bit of what I wanted.
And they grabbed you back.
Yeah. And I don't know what it was. I've not convinced myself one way or the other that it was, you know, I'm not a big demonic believer or anything like that. But things can happen if you try hard enough and if you really let it consume you. And you know, I've had, you know, we would need a couple of more hours, but you know, I've had a lot of rapping experiences. I also communicated. I had what I called my rapper friend, where for like 3 or 4 EVP sessions, they met me again, and I had some pretty convincing knocks on the walls. You know, that seemed like real communication. I would never be able to prove it, you know, and I never would. I never would say that was paranormal. You know, I've had some cool things come through Spirit Box. But you know, I've never seen anything. I don't tend to see things. And with my Mr. Magoo eyesight, I've always said I'm just never gonna see something.
Yeah.
If it
can
goes,
barely see normal things, much less
right,
a paranormal.
then here
thing.
I am. I also make the joke like, here I am sleeping with a giant CPAP attached to my face without my glasses, and so I can't see anything with my glasses. And you're so if I am ever visited by a loved one, in a bedside, visitation, I'm like, you better hang it up because
you never know.
I'm not going to be able to see you and I can't hear you. An earthquake could happen and I'm going to still be asleep.
Yeah. And that's one of the things too, I think with the paranormal world, talking about skepticism and people who are skeptics, we talk a lot on here about, how you got to have a personal experience. But that's really going to be the only thing that drives you. I think you can look at other people's evidence all you want, but you're always going to be skeptical until you have your own evidence. Mm-hmm. And that kind of plays into what you were talking about earlier. Like, everyone's trying to discredit everybody else's evidence, and I feel that way, EVPs, like you were talking about earlier, EVPs, you get a really good EVP. I think that's good for me. When I capture a good EVP, that's great. If you capture a really nice EVP, I'm always in the back of my mind going to go, well, is that real or fake? Because it almost gets to that point. I've heard really good EVPs, and I'm like, either this is proof of the paranormal, or it's a hoax. But I don't know which one because
that person's stomach, growling.
Yeah.
Or them brushing. I can't tell you how many people have brushes across the desk where they brush something across the desk and they're like, oh, did you hear that? That said, stay out. And I'm like, or you just moved the recorder across the desk, and then they're like insulted when you suggest that. But it's like, I'm sorry, it sounds kind of like that. And I've heard enough examples of that. Or, my dog who used to like hang out under my desk when I would, do some EVP stuff, and you would hear some really hellish things and like, okay, that's the dog breathing. I also, I also have a question about the cabinet, because that's one thing that's been sticking with me lately too, is like, sometimes I feel like people have paranormal experiences and our brain just go, nope, not today. Like, I'm just gonna, and like, forget that it even occurred. Like, it's almost like we can just almost tune it out. Because I've done that myself where I'm like, I think I just saw something staring at me from down the hall. And then I'm like, never mind, I'm going to watch the baseball game, And it's like, so I'm kind of curious, is that kind of what was happening with you at that moment? Was it something that just kind of went underneath your radar, or were you just kind of like consciously being like, I'm not dealing with that right now? I am very into my routines. And when I start something, finish something, and very organized. And so it's like I started something and I was probably trying to get it finished, and like nothing was going to keep me from finishing it. But then I don't know. But I think there might be something to that, because, how many people have said they've seen a ghost and they're pretty confident it's a ghost, and they weren't see-through. It just looked like a normal person. Yes. Or some mediums that say the spirits I see are just like normal people. And I can't imagine what that looks like because I haven't seen it. But, especially if you're a child that has experiences, maybe I have had paranormal experiences. Maybe I did have visits from spirit friends and they just looked like normal people to me. And I wrote it off, and I don't know.
We've had that conversation recently. Like if ghosts and spirit people are showing up like just a normal person, how many people are we seeing and they're not actually living?
Right.
Yeah.
They're not all going to look like Casper.
Yeah. Wouldn't even know.
Well, that's actually another rabbit hole I've been going down recently, was this idea, speaking of looking like Casper, is this idea of full-bodied apparitions is somewhat new, like in the way that you see them, like in the movie sense of like this translucent figure or this thing that's kind of floating through the air. Kind of comes from the invention of film. I'm not sure if you've heard of this before. I know I was talking about Jenny with it the other day, but before the invention of film, any ghost sightings that were done, the ghosts look exactly like a human. But they could appear out of nowhere, and they could like go through walls and doors, but there was no like see-through appearance or like floating, none of that stuff existed until they started doing it, because I forgot the name of the technique they were using in the 1800s. But yeah, it was kind of interesting that, to add to the skeptic side, some of the things that people see, it's like, well, how come this has only been seen since, 1870? And every other ghost that was ever seen in history that was documented beforehand was a solid apparition.
It also makes me think of, that same time period, Victorian times, 1800s, early 1900s, ghost stories in newspapers were really big. And they would share each other's, a newspaper in Missouri would take a ghost story that was printed in a newspaper in Massachusetts or wherever, and they would take that story and sometimes they would embellish them. That annoys me now. I'm like, how do you just decide you're going to embellish a story like that? Probably because, like today, the media doesn't always take us seriously when they talk to, paranormal outlets or whatever.
Even in your story, it happened right at the witching hour, right at 3 a.m.
Right. Right. Exactly. So I think a lot of those stories were just shared across the country. And so once you've read a couple of those stories and it went viral in 1860 or whatever, I think maybe that stuff kind of spreads. And then all of a sudden the ghosts are glowing and only, the top half could be seen, or they went through the wall, or, or it was holding a lantern, or it was a ghost in white. You never have, I always joke, you never have a ghost in parachute pants, or, you don't have.
It's always a lady in white or a lady in blue or a lady in black.
It's a little, it's one of those too soon type things, but there are ghosts now, I'm sure, that know how to rock a smartphone and could like text you all day long if you really ask them for it,
Yeah.
Yep.
Right. All right. We have reached the top of the hour. Just to welcome in everyone who's joined us since the beginning of the show. Welcome in. Tonight, our guest is Patrck Keller, and we are talking about, the paranormal and paranormal podcasting and all kinds of stuff. So feel free to jump in and join in the conversation if you're here, whether you're over on Facebook or whether you're joining us on Twitch. Feel free to put any questions that you have for Patrck in the chat, and we will get them over to him here in the last bit of time that we have left. And if you are joining us at another time, at another place, on one of the podcast platforms afterwards, we will have all the links for Patrck listed down below, and you can feel free to leave comments, and I'm always checking those, so you can ask me any questions that you have at a later time, and I'll still be there hanging out with you. For those who are looking, you can go to bigseance.com. BIGSEANCE.com, and I'll have that listed below. It's pinned up at the top of chat, so you can go check that out if you're looking to find Patrck online. If you are watching the show or hanging out with us now, then you already know Medium Jenny Lee. But did you know you can book a private session, explore her spiritual services, or check out her latest content all in one place? Head over to mediumjennylee.com. Whether you're seeking guidance, answers from beyond, or just curious about what the spirit world has to say, Jenny offers personal readings, mentorship, and more. Don't miss your chance to connect directly. Visit mediumjennylee.com and take the next step on your spiritual journey. Your journey to the weird is just a click away. In a world of mass production, there's still a place where fire meets steel and tradition comes alive. At Vincent's Forge, every piece is forged by hand, unique, durable, and built to last. Each creation carries the mark of true craftsmanship. Own something forged by fire. Own something that tells a story. Vincent's Forge, handcrafted, unforgettable. Available now on Etsy.
We have 2 questions from Keisha. First of all, she wants to know, can I come back in hammer pants with a Madonna hairdo?
Yeah.
I hope, Keisha.
And the
You
second
know?
one's a serious question. How do you conduct your seances?
To me, in my mind, and I have led some group investigations at a few events and things like that for fun. And I've also, when I am investigating seriously, on my own or with a group, to me, a paranormal investigation itself is a seance.
Mm-hmm.
I do not believe you have to be sitting in a circle with candles or with a crystal ball or even have a medium. I think as long as you have a group of people or just yourself and you put intention behind it. And, I have been known to be in an EVP session or be at a location, whether it's by myself or with a group, and trying really hard, like maybe playing some trigger music or, knowing a little bit about what might be there or someone who might be there. And you're trying so hard and you're imagining, you don't hear anything, but you're imagining that they're communicating back with you. And, I like to ask questions that, they would want to talk about, like, tell me about your family and what were holidays like and things like that. And I can get myself to sit there and cry, because I'm like, I'm imagining maybe I am communicating with somebody and I just don't know. I don't know how that answers the question, but, I think there's a lot of ways to do a seance that isn't a traditional flamboyant medium, and, in the Victorian times. Now, while that is an obsession of mine too, Victorian times, and I love that imagery, which is why I have the Big Seance podcast, and I have the candelabras and stuff like that, but I don't think you need it. I don't even think you can have gadgets and have a seance or sit with the Ouija board and have a seance. That's my belief.
Yeah. We're going to do our first. I've never really partaken in an official seance. I've done Ouija boards and I've done some things like that, but we are going to have a seance at the Teamwear Takeover that we're doing in June. So we are going to sit around and have a giant seance. So I'm kind of curious. And it's an old 1920s French Renaissance style hotel.
French revival.
You could have like a gangsta seance.
Yeah.
Or a flapper seance.
Yeah, they do have a speakeasy room there. But that's going to be that's going to be the first official seance that we do. So that'll be fun. We have a comment here from ChicoCath. ChicoCath said, I do think we talk about documentation of these experiences and we forget about hieroglyphics and other ancient writing systems that show images of things like winged people or shadow type images behind groups of people. Just saying.
Absolutely. I often say, me, maybe it's being an educator and teaching middle school for so long, trying to be fair. I hate when people try to categorize things in the spirit world. And, it's kind of like, to me, like angels. And I know, Jenny Lee, I think you've talked about angels, and it's like, to me, that's kind of fuzzy. Like, what is an angel and what's, that kind of thing.
She was as shocked as everybody else.
I didn't believe in them until I saw one. And then it was weird because it was like, once I saw one, I was like, oh yeah, I remember you now. And to me, the angel, from my experiences with them, is that that's not really what they look like. And they don't really have a sex, but they show up, they present themselves that way so that we know what they are. So yeah, because they do show up very strangely, beautiful. They're always beautiful. They always have wings. And we always like to joke about this when they come around. They always have some sort of cloak or robe on that has embroidery. And I'm always like, who's embroidering in the angel realm? They just have like a person that sits around, like has to embroider all these
Making all the clothes.
The harp player behind them in the back.
So, I mean, but it's just how they present themselves so that we know who they are, is my experience.
I can get behind that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is all this show and everything. I mean, we've gone the strange paths quite a few times with that. So.
But, yeah, I know you have, like Boogosphere. I heard that. I'm like, Boogosphere. And then, Dumpster Fire from, Allison was getting you all ready for the dumpster fire. Yeah. I creeped your last couple of episodes before coming on here.
Apparently so. Yeah.
Yeah. So one thing Keisha also said, I want to mention about that she got her hopes up because when you said Gangsta Seance, she wanted to talk about Tupac and Easy.
Some people think when I talk about my rapper that I'm talking about, Tupac and all of that. You never know.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're talking about a knocker, something that knocks. Yeah. Which can also be a really fun thing if you, the terminology gets confused.
I know. Or how about every time in a paranormal investigation when someone wants a spirit to turn the light on and they say, "Can you make that go off?" And I always want to say, stop saying "make that go off," because go off, we have like the English language in America. Like it's so bizarre. Like you want something to turn on, but you say go off. I'm like, let's say, can you make the light go on? Perhaps.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, who were some of your favorite guests or special guests or fun conversations that you've had on your Big Seance podcast over the years?
Well, and this is a long time ago. This is quite a few years ago, but one of the strangest ones was Uri Geller.
Oh, that's who I was hoping you would talk about.
And it was one of those situations where when I landed this interview, first of all, it was an accident. I'm here to tell you, I don't know how it happened. I didn't go out of my way to make it happen. I don't remember how it happened. It just, and I almost did a cartwheel and then I jumped in to do some research, right? I didn't know a ton and I didn't realize how much history that man has with weird things.
Yes.
And experiments and government things. And at the time I booked this interview with him. And like all of a sudden, 2 days before the interview was going to happen, the, government dropped all of those files. This was like 2012 or 2016, 2018, something like that. I forget what files were where his name was mentioned.
Yeah.
And doing like a lot of the psychic experiments and things like that. And that was huge news. And I went, shut up. And so here I am, just dummy, expert at nothing, like we've talked about. And I was his first interview.
Wow.
After that happened.
And he told me, and then he started promoting it as the first big interview.
Wow.
I was like, oh, that's embarrassing. Because I'm sure, when you're not a journalist.
Well, that's what I was getting ready to say. Did you feel like you almost had to put like a journalist hat on for that interview?
Yes. Yeah, I did. And I also felt kind of dumb because I didn't know how to ask. I don't know a lot about even the terminology of like a lot of what he was, I don't even know how to talk about it now because I haven't looked at that or listened to that in so long.
Yeah.
But it was interesting. And I will tell you, when we were done, it was so bizarre because he said, "Okay, are you done recording?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "No, seriously, did you stop the recording?" And I said, "Yes, I have."
Yeah.
And he said, "I just wanted to make sure." He said, "I wanted to, first of all," he gave me some compliments and told me how fabulous it was and how fabulous I was as a person. And I wish I had that recorded because it would be nice to have that. I don't remember exactly what he said. But then he said, just to let you know, I am pretty confident that I don't know if he said CIA or whatever group he said is listening in right now.
Oh,
and
wow.
So I just wanted to let you know for what that's worth.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to say thanks for telling me that. You could have just not told me.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and he had a person kind of handling our conversation and saying, okay, thank you. He's whatever. He had a manager or whatever. And so we hung up, and it was one of those situations where I was like, hello, thanks for, and I've never been one of those people that wanted to put the Post-it over the camera on your computer.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I put a Post-it over the camera on my computer that night because I was like,
Yeah.
That was a little weird. I also loved my conversation with the late Guy Lyon Playfair.
Mm.
It was one of the coolest interviews ever from England. He was the investigator from the Enfield poltergeist.
Oh, wow.
Everybody thinks it's, what's their faces.
Mm-hmm.
And, they make good movies with their storylines, but, they were there for they were there for like a night, and, Guy Lyon Playfair was there for like a year, and
wow.
Talking to him and dispelling a lot of, misstatements and things that didn't really happen. And then of course, the gentleman who owns now all the Enfield tapes, all the recordings.
Mm-hmm.
A little while later, I interviewed him and played some of those recordings, and so got into the weeds with that stuff and learned about a lot of that. That was fun. And then, one of the cool things about my podcast, I think, is I never just wanted to reach out to the famous people. And so I had a lot of just everyday people, that I would,
the little people.
Yeah. The little mediums, it's just you can learn.
They're
from
all
a
just
lot
as
of people.
fascinating and important and great. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And some of my guests, believe it or not, some of the mediums that I have, either the mediums or like authors that I have met, or historians that I have met, were parents that were sitting at parent-teacher conferences with me across the table with their kid. And we ended up talking about paranormal things and not the kid. And I'm like, oh, I am so sorry, but we're going to. So there were a few of those experiences. So they have been some guests. And but yeah, recently, though, if you want to talk recently, if you don't know Nurse Hadley, who I thought about this earlier when you were talking about your deathbed stuff in DEs. She has stories from hospice, and she is probably the most viral person I've ever had on my show. She's been on, the biggest, she's been on TV shows, and she probably, if Oprah was still around, she probably would have been on Oprah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That was pretty cool. And I've talked to, who was it? Oh, there's a woman, her name is Olivia Cacchione, who is a musicologist, and her, research now is on the music of Victorian seances. How specific is that?
Wow.
The music of Victorian seances. And as a music teacher, I saw that and I was like, shut up, both of my worlds crashing together. That was cool. I've talked to James Penka, who is the spokesperson for RMS Titanic Incorporated. He's a Titanic expert, and I've talked to a lot of mediums. gosh, so many. Oh, the Morning Society of St. Louis. If your city has a local morning society, like MOURN, Morning Society, those are fascinating people. Kind of like, Civil War reenactors, except they go out and reenact and educate about mourning practices and Victorian time periods, and go out into the cemeteries and reenact a Victorian funeral, or mourning, or oh my gosh, so many nerdy things. I'll shut up now.
I never heard of that before. That's interesting.
Oh yeah, and I think they're one of the largest in the country, and are kind of a model, I think, for a lot of other mourning societies. And I have quite a few friends from that group, and have gone to a few events. And they have some great photos of their events too. I mean, if you get the right photographer, it looks like, you've got an old photo. Gone
back in time.
Yeah, but they'll talk about hair art, and so many interesting mourning traditions and practices.
Well, we were talking a lot about kind of the age of spiritualism and stuff like that, which I guess is kind of going through a rebirth, so to speak. But going back to that specific time, spiritualism, early mediumship, kind of some of the things we've touched on today. Did you ever really kind of get into looking into or interested in physical mediumship?
Like I said, I tried to put my hand into a lot of things, and there was nothing I would have loved more 20 years ago than to put a shingle up and learn how to be a medium and do the thing. I tried. I wanted to develop abilities, and but it didn't happen.
No guests that were physical mediums or anything like that.
Myself, no. I mean, I have, like I said, when I would, and it's been a long time since I've just really poured myself into this stuff. But, I had those experiences with being grabbed in bed. I had experiences with being touched. I've had that door experience. I've had the rapping experiences. And I think that for me, I am not super intuitive. I can get myself to be there, but I have to immerse myself into it for weeks, and it's kind of like, I feel like I have been visited in dreams, by loved ones. And I can very easily get myself to have a dream, or to, if like, for example, when I first started reading about all of this stuff, the more I read about it, the more I would have experiences when I would go to sleep. So I think if you want to have those experiences, sometimes people like me, that's how you're going to do it, by immersing yourself into it, learning about it. Yeah. I'm not saying everybody has to sit there and meditate and light a candle, but you have to have, it's kind of a mind game too. You have to get yourself there.
I think you're onto something there. Like I said, I've messed around with it. And one thing that I've realized from messing around, and well, I won't say messing around, but learning mediumship, is you do have to have time to devote to it. And as you do it, you realize that you need to devote more time to it. And then without going into the full story, but I started having experiences, and I was like, I don't really have time to do this right now. Like, I got a podcast to do, and I got, I'm a teacher also. So I got all that to do, and I got to go, get dinner ready. And so when am I supposed to do all this? So I'll let Jenny handle that. And then I'll wash the dishes. You know what I mean?
There you go. But I also think that my skeptic side cancels a lot of that stuff out. I really
think that can too. You really have,
but I can't help it.
Trust. Yeah. I think that's the other hard thing for me to break down. And I think I can, if maybe one day I will do more. I've been wanting to do more. But I think that's you really have to let go of that doubt. Like, you really have to trust it. Because there's that line of like, am I just making this stuff up, or is this actually happening? And I think once you lean into it, and you do more meditation and stuff, I really do think that, it's not for everyone, and not everyone I think has the time to devote to something like that.
And I think not everybody should, like I'm not meant to be a medium. If I went out to practice mediumship, it would be for the wrong reasons. It would be just because I thought it was cool.
I mean, yeah. Well, what do you think, Jenny?
Well, I don't think everybody that wants to learn how to be a medium they don't have to use it to work as a medium, everybody can have the ability to connect with their own loved ones or have their own experiences without it being a profession.
Or even to have like their own consultation to talk, to get some advice or things, I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. They don't have to do it for other people necessarily. Just do it for themselves.
They just do it for yourself. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
One thing that I think is cool, I have a really kind of like your Discord, I have, we're a little sleepy these days since I haven't had a lot of new episodes, but a pretty cool podcast group, private group on Facebook of listeners. And so, of course, that's a go-to place for sometimes experts on different topics. And there's a lot of mediums in there or practicing mediums. People are just getting started with mediumship. And one thing I encourage people in that group is I'm like, as long as you're not charging people and you just want to practice and want to put out a form and say, hey, I'm going to, I'm offering to do some readings. I'm getting practice. And I think that is cool. And I've had several people go in and contact me first and say, is it cool for me to do that? And I'm like, yes, like that. How nerdy and cool is that? That's what we're all here for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And just let me know how it goes. Give me some feedback when it's done. I want to hear about it.
Fun. We got a few minutes left here. I wanted to touch on your cemetery photography because I also am a photographer, and that is one thing that's a place and a subject matter that I also very much enjoy photographing is cemeteries. So I just wanted us to chit chat about that for a little bit.
You're probably like me, and I don't travel a lot, but when we're in a new place, like I can sniff out an old country cemetery.
Yeah.
And Frosty is probably like, oh, God,
yes,
that's my husband. He's like, no, you didn't see it. Nope, that's not a cemetery. Keep driving. I'm like, no, stop. It's a cemetery.
Yes, that's exactly happened to me.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like the older, the better. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes the more forgotten cemeteries are special experiences. And oh my gosh, there's so much beauty in some people go out and I really admire the people and they are out there. Kudos to them who will go and repair headstones and clean headstones. And, I don't have that experience, and I'm not physically capable to lift a headstone and repair it and all of that. But I do sometimes I'll go and I'll bring gifts and I'll pick out some headstones and take some photos of them and then I'll, visit them frequently. Sometimes I kind of adopt them and bring like a pumpkin in the fall or do genealogy and, say, hey, I'm just thinking of you. And I always try to make sure I pick the ones that for sure don't have living, loved ones that are, because, we don't need to be bugging other people's spaces, but no, gosh, an old iron fence in a cemetery. Oh, they take the lichens and the everything.
Yes. All of the life that is growing on the dead. Yes.
And the 200-year-old trees, that are, I haven't, it's been a long while since I've gone and taken some new photos.
Me too.
And, now that you don't need the chunky, fancy Canon camera to go and take a good, photo with, the bokeh, the blurry stuff in the background. I'm not as good. It's funny. I can't take as cool of a photo with an iPhone now. You can do the same thing, but I can't do it. But I can take my old school Canon and, sometimes get some really cool shots. But I do have all of that on a Flickr account. I don't think Flickr is as cool as it used to be anymore, but I have all of my seance photography, which I think you probably had the link to that too. I think that's in my bio. But I have I think it's some pretty cool. Some people do some really, like I said, I admire people who do cemetery photography, but then they document and they do genealogy and they upload it to cemetery sites and all of that stuff. I just selfishly take pictures and think that they're cool.
Me too. Yeah. I love walking through and just thinking about how every single person there has their own story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to me, it's like a park kind of.
It is. Yeah.
When I was younger, my grandma lived near a cemetery, and sometimes she packed me a lunch, and I went on a picnic by myself.
Oh, well, I was just reading that, it wasn't that long ago when there weren't public parks. That's where people would go. They would go to cemeteries because that was the only green space in their area. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Yeah. Well, we're down to the last 2 minutes. Do you have anything going on? You gonna be doing any new podcast episodes, or what can people expect to see from you, hear from you?
I don't want to. I haven't committed to any new episodes in the near future, but there is, some publishers have sent me a couple books that I have requested and I've checked out. And one of them is on the topic of creepy dolls, I don't know if it's necessarily haunted dolls, but spooky dolls. And that is a potential for being, and I've never done an episode on that before. So, that could be an upcoming episode, but no, other than that, I was planning on going to, what would have been the second, Missouri Paracon, which was huge last year. And,
yes.
And, it was sadly canceled.
Oh,
so,
no.
Okay. Was that the one that moved from Michigan?
Yes.
Okay. Because I know that was we didn't get a chance to go. We were trying to go to the last one. And then we were.
It was great. Yeah. I met I never had the opportunity to go to Michigan Paracon.
I didn't either.
And so that was a cool way for me to meet a new circle of nerds. One thing that I think is cool about going through all of your guests that you've had, it's a whole bunch of people that are not in my circle. I don't know a lot of the names that you guys have talked to. And I love this opportunity to get out of one bubble and mix in with another bubble.
Well, you talked about that earlier. That's one of the great things about doing the podcast and going to some of these cons is you just meet new cool people and new cool people that are really fun to talk to and to be friends with. And so, always. Yeah. It's great.
And you guys have, oh my gosh, you guys have a ton of chatters and people watching live. That's really cool. Congratulations to you. That's a cool community you guys have built.
Weird.
Yeah. Excellent. All right. Well, we have reached, whether we want it to be or not, we've reached 9:30. So thank you again, Patrick, for coming on. We had a blast talking to you. Hopefully we can talk again. And,
it was an honor to be asked, and thank you very much. I had fun.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Patrick.
For all of you who are listening at another time and another place, we will see you all next time